Ancient stones hold a secret written in the cycles of the moon. Scattered across forgotten landscapes, megalithic observatories appear to track a celestial dance so slow and subtle it unfolds just once in a human generation. This video will reveal how structures built over 5,000 years ago achieved a precision that challenges our understanding of prehistory itself. We will explore how cultures with no written language could design monuments aligned to the 18.6-year lunar standstill, and what this staggering feat says about their vision of the cosmos. What does it mean to build for a future you will never see? To understand this ancient precision, we must first grasp a celestial rhythm far more intricate than the sun's reliable path. Every year, the sun performs a simple, predictable dance. It rises and sets at its northernmost point on the summer solstice, and at its southernmost on the winter solstice, a cycle that repeats with comforting regularity. The moon, however, follows a far more complex script. Its orbit is tilted relative to Earth's path around the sun, causing its own rising and setting points to shift north and south over a much longer period. Think of it this way: if the sun's annual journey is a steady, repeating heartbeat, the moon's motion is a slow, deep breath that takes nearly 19 years to complete. Over this 18.6-year cycle, the points on the horizon where the moon rises and sets gradually creep farther apart at what is called a major lunar standstill. At that peak, the moon will rise at its absolute furthest north and roughly 2 weeks later set at its absolute furthest south, positions it will not touch again for another generation. Then the cycle reverses, the moon's path contracts, and it reaches a minor standstill where its movements are far more modest. This is not a single dramatic event like a solstice sunrise, but a creeping extreme that requires decades of patient, meticulous observation to even recognize, let alone predict. Tracking the sun requires watching a single year. To comprehend the lunar standstill demands the dedication to observe and record the sky across a span of time longer than many ancient individuals would have lived. It is a testament to a culture's collective memory, a society determined to pass down celestial knowledge across generations for a purpose we are only beginning to fathom. This profound celestial knowledge was not held in libraries or written on scrolls, but etched into the very landscape itself. Across the windswept hills and green valleys of ancient Europe, and in pockets around the world, our ancestors raised stones of immense size and weight. These are the megaliths, a word meaning simply large stones, yet their simplicity ends there. They take many forms. Single, towering sentinels called men here stand in lonely fields. Long, straight rows of stones march across the countryside in alignments that can stretch for miles. Enigmatic circles, the most famous being Stonehenge, form rings of precise geometry. And great mounds of earth and stone, like the passage tombs of Newgrange in Ireland, create dark interior chambers. For centuries, these monuments were shrouded in mystery, often dismissed as primitive temples or vague ritual sites. But a closer look reveals something far more deliberate. The stones are not randomly placed. They are often shaped, transported over vast distances, and erected with an engineering skill that still impresses us today. This immense effort hints at a purpose that was absolutely central to the community's survival and worldview. The generic idea of ritual does not fully capture it. Ritual is the how, the ceremony performed. But what was the ceremony for? Modern research has steadily built a compelling case that for many of these sites, the ritual was inextricably linked to a practical, breathtaking function. They were calendars, calculators, and observatories built in stone. They were designed to harmonize human life with the grand, predictable cycles of the cosmos, to mark the sun's turning points, and, as we are discovering, to capture the far more elusive dance of the moon. This transforms these silent stones from monuments of superstition into monuments of profound science, a silent language spoken between earth and sky. The most iconic of these stone calendars is, without question, Stonehenge. Its massive trilithons and precise circle dominate our imagination, a monument so famous it often stands in for all megalithic mysteries. For good reason, its primary alignments are tied to the sun. The central axis of the site points to the midsummer sunrise, a breathtaking spectacle that draws thousands each year. Yet, woven into its complex geometry are clues to a deeper, more patient observation. Look beyond the central circle. 4 smaller stones, known as the station stones, once formed a precise rectangle around the main monument. The long sides of this rectangle align to the southernmost moonrise at a major standstill, while its short sides point to the most northerly moonrise at a minor standstill. It is as if the builders framed the entire lunar cycle within a single, geometric shape. Even the approach, the so-called avenue that leads to the heel stone, may have served a dual purpose, marking not just the summer solstice sun, but also acting as a sightline for the moon at the peak of its long journey. This layered design suggests a mind that saw the cosmos as an integrated whole. The sun provided the daily and yearly rhythm, the heartbeat of life and agriculture. But the moon, with its slower generational pulse, may have represented something else entirely, a connection to longer cycles of time, to ancestors, and to a cosmic order that transcended a single human lifespan. To build for both celestial bodies within one structure is a staggering act of long-term planning. Yet, because Stonehenge is so monumental and its history so layered with later additions, the lunar evidence there remains a topic of spirited debate. Its very fame can obscure a vital truth. If this knowledge existed, it was not confined to one place. To find the clearest evidence of this ancient lunar science, we must journey away from the world-famous circle and listen to the quieter stones. The evidence for this deep lunar knowledge becomes undeniable on a remote Scottish island. On the Isle of Lewis, battered by Atlantic winds, stand the Callanish stones. Unlike the dense, imposing circle of Stonehenge, Callanish is a sprawling, open arrangement that seems to converse directly with the horizon. A central ring of tall, slender stones forms a kind of heart, from which long avenues of stones stretch out like arms in a distinctive cruciform shape. One of these arms, the southern avenue, points unerringly toward a low hill on the horizon. For most of the year, nothing of particular note happens there. But during a major lunar standstill, something magical occurs. The full moon, at its furthest southern extreme, appears to roll along the crest of that distant hill before setting, as if guided down a celestial pathway laid out by the stones themselves. This alignment is not a vague possibility. It is a precise and repeatable event that fits the 18.6-year cycle perfectly. While Stonehenge's lunar connections are woven into a complex, multi-phase structure, Callanish offers a clearer, more singular statement. The entire landscape seems designed to frame this one slow-motion event. The central circle and its avenues create a series of sightlines, a stone-built viewfinder that captures the moon at the peak of its long journey. This transforms the site from a static monument into a dynamic instrument. One can almost envision the community gathering on a cold, clear night, watching in silence as the moon, fat and low, obediently follows the path their ancestors had marked for it centuries before. It is a moment of validation, a proof that their understanding of cosmic time was correct, and a powerful connection to the generations who built the alignment they now used. Callanish stands as perhaps the most compelling argument that ancient astronomers did not just observe the moon, they predicted its most subtle behaviors and permanently recorded that knowledge in the land itself. But the lunar observatories were not limited to remote islands. Travel to the rolling farmlands of northeastern Scotland, and you will encounter a completely different architectural solution to the same celestial puzzle. Here, scattered across the landscape, are the recumbent stone circles. Their name comes from their most striking feature. In each circle on the southern arc lies one massive stone placed on its side. This is the recumbent, a slab that can weigh tens of tons, looking for all the world like a great stone bench. It is always carefully flanked by two of the tallest upright stones in the entire circle, standing like silent guardians on either side. This unique arrangement is not an accident of time or a collapsed monument. It is the deliberate, defining heart of these sites. Archaeologists and astronomers studying these circles noticed something profound. When you stand in the center of the circle and look toward this recumbent stone arrangement, you are looking south. The two tall flanking stones and the long, low recumbent between them create a perfect, artificial horizon. They form a framed window built entirely from stone. Now consider what happens in the sky to the south. The sun, at its highest point, travels across this sector. But the moon, at the peak of its major standstill cycle, reaches its most southerly extreme low in this same part of the sky. The compelling theory is that this stone frame was designed to capture that very event. During a major lunar standstill, as the full moon journeyed low across the southern sky, it would have appeared to glide right into this stone window, seeming to rest upon the recumbent slab or slip between its towering pillars. The visual effect would have been stunning, a piece of the cosmos neatly slotted into a frame built by human hands. This transforms the circle from a simple gathering place into a precise observational instrument. The community didn't just watch the moon, they watched it through a portal engineered to highlight its most dramatic and rarest performance. It was a way of bringing a generational event down to Earth, of making the vast, slow cycle of the moon something tangible and visible, contained within the architecture of their sacred space. The story of stone and sky finds another profound chapter not in standing circles, but in silent, earth-covered hills. Across the Irish Sea, in the fertile Boyne Valley, ancient builders constructed monuments of a different kind. These are the passage tombs, great mounds of stone and earth with long, narrow corridors leading to central chambers. The most famous is Newgrange, a massive, rounded structure older than the pyramids of Giza. Its genius is visibly solar. Above the entrance rests a unique feature called a roof box, a small, carefully crafted opening. For just a few days around the winter solstice, as the sun reaches its lowest, weakest point in the year, a miraculous event occurs. The first rays of the rising sun spear through this roof box, travel down the 60-foot dark passageway, and slowly illuminate the inner chamber with a golden light. It is a breathtaking feat of engineering and astronomical intent, a guaranteed moment of solar rebirth built into the architecture itself. This powerful solar alignment is so dramatic it has long defined our understanding of these sites. But what if the builders were tracking more than just the sun? Just a short walk from Newgrange lies its sister mound, Knowth. Knowth is less famous for a single light show, but it is far more complex. It is covered in elaborate, swirling megalithic art, and crucially, it has not one, but two passageways facing opposite directions, east and west. These alignments do not correspond to significant solar events like solstices or equinoxes. Instead, researchers have proposed a compelling lunar hypothesis. The eastern passage may target the rising moon at its most northerly extreme, the Major Standstill moonrise. The western passage could align with the setting moon at its opposite, southerly extreme. This suggests a deliberate, complementary design, where Newgrange captures the sun at its yearly nadir, a symbol of death and renewal. Knowth might have been designed to frame the moon at the peaks of its generational dance. This transforms the Boyne Valley from a collection of separate tombs into a potential integrated observatory complex. Imagine a cosmology where the sun and moon were not rivals, but partners in a cosmic balance. The sun governed the cycles of life, growth, and the annual rhythm. The moon, with its longer, ghostlier cycle, may have been linked to the rhythms of the ancestors, to the longer sweep of time beyond a single life. Building two great mounds side by side, one for each celestial power, speaks to a society that saw the universe as a balanced, interlocking system. It raises a staggering possibility that 5,000 years ago, in this one river valley, a coordinated astronomical tradition flourished, one sophisticated enough to engineer precise alignments for both the yearly sun and the generational moon, encoding their entire understanding of cosmic time into the very shape of the land. This level of precision presents us with our first great historical puzzle. We are not looking at monuments that merely face roughly east or west. We are discussing alignments so specific they capture a celestial event that occurs just once, or perhaps twice, in a single human lifetime. Consider the practical reality of achieving this. These builders had no written language as we know it, no telescopes, no metal tools, and no concept of precise angular measurement like degrees or minutes. Their entire universe of data was the naked eye, the horizon, and a profound, patient memory of the sky. To mark the moon's most extreme standstill, they first had to recognize it was happening. This meant observing the moon's rising and setting points meticulously, year after year, and noting the slow creep northward or southward until it finally stopped, seeming to stand still on the horizon for a series of years before beginning its long retreat. This observation alone would require a dedication spanning decades, but recognition is only the first step. The true challenge was translation. How do you take that observed point on a distant hill, a notch between two mountains, or a specific tree, and permanently encode it into a multi-ton stone arrangement that will last for millennia? They likely used simple, brilliant tools. A pair of stakes in the ground could sight a line, a length of rope could establish a circle, water in a trough could create a perfectly level surface. But these tools demand flawless execution. Moving a 50-ton recumbent stone even a few hand widths to the left or right would throw off an alignment meant to frame a sliver of sky. The construction itself, involving levers, ropes, ramps, and hundreds of people, was an exercise in controlled chaos. How did they ensure that after years of quarrying, dragging, and raising, the final stone would sit in the exact spot their astronomer priests had determined a generation prior? This hints at a society with an extraordinary chain of command and a shared, sacred purpose that could outlast individual leaders. The knowledge could not reside with one person. It had to be embedded in the community's oral tradition, in stories, songs, and ritual practices repeated so often that the crucial data, wait 18 winters, watch the southern hill, mark the stone here, was passed down without corruption. One missed observation, one forgotten instruction, and the entire generational project fails. The success of these sites tells us they did not fail. They maintained an unbroken thread of celestial knowledge over centuries, turning a subtle dance of light and shadow into an eternal architecture of stone. The sheer ambition of these projects forces us to ask a modern question. How can we, with our scientific mindset, possibly verify that an ancient alignment is intentional and not just a lucky accident of geology or imagination? This is where a fascinating field of study comes into play, a discipline that bridges the gap between ancient stones and modern software. It is called Archaeoastronomy, the science of ancient skies. At its heart, Archaeoastronomy is detective work. Its practitioners are not just astronomers or archaeologists alone, but investigators who combine both toolkits to interrogate a site. The process begins with painstaking, on-the-ground surveying. Using precision instruments like theodolites and GPS, researchers map every stone, every sightline, every dip and rise in the horizon with millimeter accuracy. They are not just measuring where a stone is, but what it frames. This creates a precise, three-dimensional digital model of the monument as it exists today. But the sky has changed over millennia. The gentle wobble of Earth's axis, a cycle called precession, means the positions of stars have slowly drifted. The Moon's orbit has also undergone subtle shifts, so the next step involves turning back the cosmic clock. Using sophisticated astronomical software, researchers can reconstruct the exact appearance of the night sky for any date in the past, from 5,000 years ago to just last week. They can calculate precisely where the sun, moon, and bright stars would have risen and set on the horizon as seen from that specific location. Now comes the critical test. The digital model of the stone alignment is overlaid with the digital reconstruction of the ancient sky. Does the central axis of a passage tomb point to a winter solstice sunrise 5,000 years ago? Does the gap between two towering stones frame the southernmost moonrise during a major standstill? The software can show this with mathematical certainty. Yet, proving intention requires more than a single match. This is where statistical analysis enters. A single alignment could be coincidence, but if a site has multiple stones that all point to significant lunar or solar events, the probability of that happening by random chance plummets. Researchers look for clusters of alignments. If the four primary sightlines of a monument all correspond to the four extreme points of the Moon's 18.6-year cycle, the odds become astronomically low that the builders just got lucky. This methodology separates genuine celestial architecture from hopeful pattern seeking. It allows us to move beyond romantic speculation and say, with scientific confidence, that the people who raised these stones were not just looking at the stars, they were mapping them, predicting their movements, and building a permanent, generational memory in granite and earth. But this scientific verification leads us directly into a profound and ongoing debate. Were these stone rings and passage tombs functioning as active observatories, like giant stone telescopes used to make new predictions? Or were they something else permanent, sacred monuments built to commemorate a celestial understanding that had already been mastered? This question strikes at the heart of how we interpret these ancient minds. The idea of an active observatory is compelling. It suggests a site like Callanish was a kind of research station. One could envision an astronomer priest standing at a specific stone, sighting along the avenue as the moon approached the horizon, marking its position with a stake in the ground, and comparing it to marks made years before to track its slow creep. The stone frame would be a precise measuring tool. In this view, the monument itself is the instrument of discovery, a machine built to decode the sky. Yet there is a powerful alternative perspective. Consider the immense effort involved, quarrying 100-ton stone, transporting it miles across rugged terrain, and erecting it with Neolithic technology was not a casual undertaking. It was the project of a lifetime or several lifetimes for an entire community. It consumed vast resources and social will. Would such a society commit to this monumental labor just to find a point on the horizon they could have marked with two simple wooden posts? Perhaps the knowledge came first, through generations of patient observation using simpler, perishable markers, a pair of poles, a notch in a tree, a pile of stones on a hill. The cycle was painstakingly learned and verified. The Great Stone Monument, then, was the culmination. It was the permanent, communal celebration of that hard-won knowledge. It transformed an abstract understanding of a 19-year cycle into an undeniable, immutable fact of the landscape. The stones were not for making the discovery, but for cementing it into the cultural memory forever. They were a covenant written in granite, a promise to the ancestors and to future generations that this celestial truth would never be forgotten. In this light, the alignment is not a tool for prediction, but a proof of prediction already achieved. The ceremony held within the circle during a major standstill was not an act of measurement, but of confirmation and awe, a moment when the community witnessed their forebears' wisdom being validated by the cosmos itself. This distinction may seem subtle, but it changes everything. It shifts the purpose from active science to sacred commemoration, from a tool for learning to a testament of what was already known. Yet, perhaps this is a modern dichotomy that the builders themselves would not recognize. For them, the act of observing, the ritual of gathering, and the stone that framed the event were all part of one seamless whole, a continuous conversation with the universe where knowing, marking, and worshipping were the same sacred act. The true scale of their achievement only becomes clear when we measure it against a human life. An 18.6-year cycle is not merely a long time. It is a generational bridge. Imagine a young apprentice, perhaps a child, first being brought to the stone circle by an elder. They are shown the southern horizon, the gap between the guardian stones, and told to watch. They learn that the moon will eventually touch that space, but not tonight, and not for many winters to come. Years pass. The child grows into an adult, taking on the role of observer. They mark the moon's incremental creep with smaller, temporary stones or posts, maintaining the vigil. Then, one clear night in their middle age, it finally happens. The full moon, huge and low, settles perfectly into the stone frame, exactly as the old one said it would. In that moment, they are not just witnessing an astronomical event. They are experiencing the fulfilled promise of their teachers, a promise made decades earlier. The monument they now tend was likely built by the grandparents of those teachers. This creates a staggering chain of custody for knowledge. There were no manuals, no blueprints left on clay tablets. The precise alignment data, the exact spot to place the 50-ton recumbent stone, had to survive in living memory, passed from mouth to ear, from one keeper of the sky to the next, for longer than most individuals would live. A single break in that chain, a forgotten detail, a misinterpreted instruction, and the entire generational project would fail. The stone would be off by a crucial degree, and the moon would never perform its framed dance. So what social machinery could possibly ensure such flawless continuity? It must have been woven into the very fabric of their culture. The knowledge was likely protected by ritual, transformed into sacred song, story, or ceremonial practice repeated at each gathering. The positions of the stones might have been encoded in myth, where the North Guardian represented one ancestor spirit and the South Guardian another, and the moon's journey was a story of reunion. Apprenticeship would have been a lifelong, sacred duty, not a casual trade. The individual holding the knowledge was less important than the role itself, a vessel for a truth bigger than any one person. This points to a society with a profound long-term perspective. They were not building for themselves or even for their children. They were building for their grandchildren's grandchildren, placing a bet on the future that their cultural memory would hold strong. The silent perfection of the alignment is their victory. It is proof that their bet paid off, that their songs were remembered, their stories were true, and their vision of cosmic order could indeed be set in stone, waiting patiently for the sky to keep its appointment. This silent partnership between stone and sky reveals an even deeper layer of sophistication. The most precise alignments often do not point from one man-made stone to another. Instead, they use the stones to frame a distant, natural feature on the horizon itself. This practice is known as horizon astronomy, and it transforms a monument from an isolated structure into an integrated part of a vast, living observatory. Think of it not as building a telescope, but as carefully choosing where to place the eyepiece for a telescope that nature already built. A distant hill, a saddle between two mountains, a distinctively shaped peak, these become the critical markers. The stones are positioned so that from a specific viewing point, perhaps the center of a circle or the end of an avenue, the chosen horizon feature is perfectly framed between two uprights or over the top of a recumbent slab. This creates a razor-shin sightline. When the moon reaches its extreme standstill, it does not just rise anywhere along the horizon. It appears to rise directly out of that specific notch or glide along that particular crest. The natural landscape provides the fine detail, while the stones provide the unwavering reference point, locking the observation into a permanent, communal viewing platform. This method achieves a level of precision that simple stone-to-stone alignments could never match. It also speaks to a profound intimacy with the land. The builders did not just impose their will upon the landscape, they listened to it. They spent generations learning its contours, understanding how the sky interacted with every hill and valley, and then they designed their sacred architecture to highlight that celestial conversation. A monument like Callanish does not work in isolation. Its power comes from that low southern hill on the horizon, the one the moon rolls along. The stones are the frame, but the landscape is the canvas. This holistic vision blurs the line between the natural and the built world, suggesting that for these ancient astronomers, the entire territory was a sacred instrument, carefully tuned to the rhythms of the cosmos. This celestial conversation between earth and sky was not a solitary whisper, but a chorus echoing across the globe. While the megaliths of Europe provide some of the clearest evidence, the drive to track the moon's long dance appears to have been a shared human impulse, emerging independently in cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia. On the Mediterranean island of Malta, the Mnajdra temple complex, built over 5,000 years ago from massive coralline limestone slabs, presents another puzzle. Its lower temple is exquisitely aligned to the equinoxes, where the rising sun's light pierces the main doorway to illuminate the central axis. Yet, researchers note that other apertures and alignments within the complex do not correspond to solar events. Some scholars propose that these may instead frame the extreme risings and settings of the moon during its standstill cycle, suggesting the temple's architects were mapping the full celestial orchestra, not just the sun's solo. This pattern of looking beyond the sun repeats itself in distant landscapes. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloan people, who later built the great cliff dwellings, were meticulous sky watchers. At sites like Chimney Rock in Colorado, they constructed high-perched communities that align with a dramatic natural horizon feature, a narrow gap between two towering rock pinnacles. Archaeological and astronomical analysis indicates this notch perfectly frames the northern major lunar standstill. Building such a settlement in that precise, challenging location speaks to a profound cultural significance placed on this rare event, a significance that guided where they literally chose to live. These parallels are not evidence of a connected, global civilization sharing blueprints. They are something more profound, independent discoveries of the same cosmic truth. Separated by continents and cultures, different societies with their own languages, gods, and tools all arrived at the same conclusion, that the moon's slow 18.6-year rhythm was a fundamental heartbeat of time worthy of their greatest architectural effort. This independent convergence suggests that tracking the lunar standstill was not merely an advanced astronomical practice, but a foundational human response to the cosmos, a way to anchor a community within the vast, predictable cycles of a living universe. This concept of a landscape as a vast, integrated observatory brings us to a startling modern parallel. Over 2,000 years after the last megalith was raised, in the 1st century before the Common Era, Greek artisans crafted a device of breathtaking complexity. Discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of the island of Antikythera, it is a corroded bronze clockwork of gears and dials, now known as the Antikythera mechanism. For decades, it was an enigma, a technological ghost from the ancient world that seemed impossibly out of place. Modern imaging has since revealed its true purpose. It was an analog computer, a hand-cranked model of the cosmos. By turning a handle, its dozens of interlocking gears would move pointers across dials to predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets, forecast eclipses, and even track the cycle of the Olympic Games. It was a portable, mechanical universe, a masterpiece of miniaturized prediction. Now hold that image in your mind and look again at the stone circles, the passage tombs, the aligned avenues. What if the megaliths represent the same fundamental idea, executed in a different medium and on a vastly different timescale? The Antikythera mechanism is a compact, kinetic computer made of metal, designed for calculation and portability. The megalithic observatories are a monumental, static computer made of earth and stone, designed for communal observation and permanence. Both are analog systems. The mechanism uses physical gears to model celestial ratios, the turning of one gear representing the orbit of the moon, another the sun's yearly path. The megaliths use the landscape itself and fixed stone sightlines as their gears and dials. The rotation of the Earth becomes the crank, and the moving sun and moon are the pointers that slide across the calibrated horizon. One system fits in a wooden box, the other encompasses entire valleys. One predicts an eclipse next year, the other marks a lunar extreme that will not recur for a generation. This is not to say the builders of Stonehenge or Callanish had gear technology. They absolutely did not. It is to say they shared the same intellectual leap, the desire to create a physical model of time and the cosmos, a machine that could lock human understanding into harmony with celestial motion. The Antikythera mechanism is a whisper of a sophisticated Hellenistic tradition. The megaliths are the shout of a Neolithic one, a tradition that solved the problem of cosmic computation not with intricate bronze gears, but with the most durable materials and the grandest scale imaginable. They built a computer you could walk inside of, one that used the sky itself as its display. The silent perfection of these stone computers forces us to confront the immense human effort behind them. To transform a celestial prediction into a 50-ton slab of granite positioned with pinpoint accuracy required more than just sky watchers. It demanded the full mobilization of an entire society. This was an engineering and organizational feat that rivals the construction of a cathedral. First came the quarry, often miles from the final site. Using stone mauls, fire, and water to fracture the bedrock, teams would painstakingly isolate a single, massive stone. Then the real challenge began, moving it. Without wheels or draft animals, the primary method was likely a combination of sledges, rollers made from tree trunks, and sheer human power. Imagine teams of hundreds coordinated by rhythm and song, inching a stone weighing as much as several elephants across bogs, up slopes, and over rivers. This was not a sporadic community gathering. It was a sustained, planned campaign that would have consumed months of labor during critical farming seasons. The social will to commit to such a project is staggering. It implies a shared belief so powerful, a purpose so central to their identity, that the entire community, from the strongest puller to the person preparing food and shelter for the workers, agreed this monument was worth the immense cost. This was not slave labor driven by a tyrant, but a collective undertaking, a covenant in stone that bound everyone together. The logistics alone required sophisticated planning, managing food supplies for the workers, maintaining tools, engineering routes, and ensuring safety. Someone had to coordinate it all, not through written orders, but through respected authority and a universally understood goal. This points to a society with clear roles, deep cooperation, and a long-term vision that transcended individual needs. They were investing not in a quick reward, but in a legacy that would speak to the sky for thousands of years. This immense communal effort was not about planting seasons or harvest dates. While the sun's reliable cycle was undeniably linked to agriculture, the moon's 18-year rhythm offered no such practical guide. Its connection to the tides was understood by coastal peoples, but for the inland builders of stone circles, its significance was far more profound. They were not building a farmer's almanac, they were building a cosmological anchor. For a society that saw the universe as a living, breathing entity of immense power, the celestial bodies were not distant lights, they were active participants in the fate of the world. The sun gave life, but the moon, with its phases of birth, death, and rebirth, its ghostly light and its slow generational pulse, was likely seen as a ruler of deeper, more mysterious forces. It governed the unseen rhythms, the cycle of life and what comes after, the flow of time beyond the individual, the very balance between order and chaos. To track its most extreme movements with such precision was to demonstrate mastery over that cosmic principle. It was a way of saying, we understand the rules of the universe. We can predict when the moon, in all its power, will reach its peak. By marking that event in immortal stone, they were performing the ultimate act of harmony. They were aligning their community, their rituals, and their sacred space with the fundamental order of existence. The ceremony held during a major standstill was not a request for favor, but a celebration of synchrony. It was the moment when human time, marked by generations of memory, met cosmic time, marked by the moon's slow dance, and they were found to be in perfect agreement. This validation was everything. In a world filled with unpredictable hardship, from illness to conflict to loss, the cosmos provided a model of perfect, predictable cycles. By mirroring that predictability in their greatest monuments, they infused their society with a sense of permanent stability and sacred purpose. The stones were a covenant, a physical promise that as long as the moon kept its appointment with the framed horizon, their world remained in balance. This ritual cosmological imperative explains the staggering investment. You do not move mountains of stone for a slightly better harvest date. You move them to secure your place in the cosmos, to weave your story into the fabric of time itself, and to create a fixed point of meaning that would outlast every individual under its watch. Yet this compelling narrative of ancient astronomers is not without its critics. Within the field of archaeology, a healthy and necessary skepticism exists, challenging how we interpret these silent stones. The core criticism is one of probability and pattern recognition. With thousands of surviving stones scattered across a landscape and hundreds of potential astronomical targets on the horizon, is it possible that some alignments are simply the result of random chance? Skeptical researchers argue that given enough stones and enough potential celestial events, some statistically coincidental matches are inevitable. They caution against what is sometimes called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where one paints a target around a cluster of bullet holes after the fact, declaring it a perfect shot. In this case, the target is painted around a cluster of stones that happen to line up with a lunar extreme, while ignoring the many other stones at the same site that point to nothing of clear significance. A single alignment might be compelling, but without a statistically robust pattern across an entire site, it could be an archaeological mirage. This perspective urges extreme caution, reminding us that the human mind is wired to find patterns, even when none were intentionally placed. Another major point of contention revolves around the natural horizon itself. Proponents of precise lunar alignments often highlight a specific notch between hills or a distinctive peak that frames the moon. Skeptics counter that the ancient horizon looked different. 5,000 years of tree growth, erosion, and human land use have altered the skyline. A gap that seems perfectly clean and framed today might have been partially obscured by forest in the past, or a hilltop since worn down. Without knowing the exact vegetation and topography of the Neolithic period, can we be certain the intended sightline was as clear as our modern, often deforested, view suggests? This introduces a significant variable. The interpretation relies on assuming we know what the builders saw, and that assumption may be flawed. It transforms a precise astronomical instrument into a more ambiguous, possibly symbolic, gesture toward the general southern sky. The most profound criticism, however, is not about statistics or sightlines, but about perspective. It asks whether we are imposing a modern, scientific mindset onto a pre-scientific culture. We see precise alignments and immediately think observatory or predictive calendar, But what if the builder's primary intent was entirely different? What if the meaning was symbolic, mythological, or ritualistic in a way that our technological worldview struggles to grasp? Perhaps the moon was not a celestial body to be measured, but a deity or an ancestor spirit. Aligning a stone to its extreme rise might not have been an act of calculation, but an act of devotion, a way of permanently marking the home of that spirit on the horizon. In this view, the precision is not for prediction, but for permanence in worship. The difference is crucial. One sees the monument as a tool for understanding natural law, the other sees it as a bridge to the supernatural. Critics argue that by focusing so intently on astronomical precision, we risk reducing a rich, complex spiritual practice to a single, mechanistic function. We might be missing the forest for the precisely aligned trees, overlooking the songs, stories, and ceremonies that gave the stones their true power and meaning for the people who gathered there. This debate is not a sign of failure in our understanding, but a sign of its vitality. It forces us to hold two powerful ideas in tension. On one hand, the mathematical and astronomical evidence at sites like Callanish is too strong to dismiss as mere coincidence. The repeated clustering of alignments around the lunar standstill cycle across different regions suggests a deliberate, widespread practice. On the other hand, the skeptical view is a vital corrective against over-enthusiasm. It reminds us that ancient people were not proto-scientists in the modern sense. Their knowledge was likely woven seamlessly into a world-view where the practical, the sacred, the ancestral, and the cosmic were indivisible. The stone that framed the moon might have served all these purposes at once: a marker for time, an altar for ceremony, a monument to ancestors, and a testament to a cosmic order. The challenge and the opportunity is to find an interpretation that honors both the demonstrable precision of their astronomy and the profound, holistic depth of their culture. We must listen to what the stones tell us about the sky, while remaining humble about what they may be whispering about the human spirit. These stones hold their secrets in a profound and enduring silence. We have no written records from the people who built them, no clay tablets inscribed with their purpose, no oral histories passed down through an unbroken line of storytellers. Every theory, every alignment, every interpretation of their grand design is a form of educated archaeology, a careful reading of a language written not in words, but in geometry, orientation, and the deliberate placement of mass against the sky. This silence is not an absence of evidence, it is the very core of the mystery. We are left to decode intention from the choices they made permanent. Why this specific hilltop and not the one next to it? Why orient the long axis of a tomb precisely southeast, a direction with no clear solar meaning? Why haul a 50-ton slab and lay it on its side, carefully flanked by two taller pillars, unless that configuration meant something undeniable? The evidence is entirely physical and positional. Researchers must become detectives of space and alignment, measuring angles, mapping sightlines to the horizon, and then running those numbers against the celestial clockwork of the past. It is a forensic science applied to culture. We are reconstructing a worldview from the shadow it cast in stone. This means our understanding is always a conversation between what we can mathematically prove and what we can reasonably infer about the human mind behind the math. The silence forces humility. It reminds us that for all our sophisticated software and precise surveys, we are interpreting a message where the most important part, the lived experience, the myth, the prayer that was spoken as the moon slid into its frame, has evaporated into time. We see the breathtaking precision of the instrument, but we can only imagine the ceremony that brought it to life. This gap between the physical proof and the lost meaning is where the true wonder resides, inviting us to listen more closely to what the architecture itself is trying to say. The silence of these ancient stones has not gone unchallenged by modern curiosity. In recent decades, a new kind of observer has arrived at these sites, armed not with stone mauls and ropes, but with digital cameras, tripods, and precise astronomical software. Their mission is to test the lunar alignment theories with direct empirical evidence, transforming speculation into a verifiable event witnessed in real time. The most compelling of these efforts are long-term photographic projects, where dedicated individuals commit to visiting a site like Callanish or a recumbent stone circle year after year, capturing the moon's position on the horizon at key moments in its cycle. They are building a modern data set, a photographic record that charts the moon's slow creep toward its extreme point, mirroring the patient observation of the ancients, but with the advantage of precise time stamping and global sharing. The goal is to catch the moment of perfect alignment during a major standstill year, to see if the full moon truly does settle into that stone-framed notch or glide along that distant hillcrest as predicted. When these alignments are confirmed, the results are often breathtaking. A photograph from within a recumbent stone circle, showing the huge, low moon perfectly cradled between the two flanking pillars and resting on the recumbent slab, is more than just a pretty picture. It is a moment of profound connection across millennia, a silent click of confirmation that the architectural intent we theorized about is real. It transforms an abstract line on an archaeoastronomer's survey map into a shared human experience of light, shadow, and stone. This verification has also become a powerful public endeavor. During major standstill years, which occur in cycles peaking around 2008, 2024, and 2040, organizations like astronomy societies and historical trusts often host public observation events at key megalithic sites. On a clear night, hundreds of people might gather in the center of a stone circle, their eyes fixed on the southern horizon. There is a palpable sense of anticipation, a collective waiting for a celestial performance scheduled by builders 5,000 years prior. When the moon rises or sets exactly as foretold by the ancient geometry, the reaction is not just academic, it is a wave of awe. These events democratize the discovery. They are a form of citizen science where the public themselves become the witnesses, providing a living, breathing corroboration that no software simulation can fully match. The data gathered, photographs, videos, personal accounts, feeds back into the academic discussion, strengthening the statistical case for intentional design. It also highlights a crucial point. These alignments work best with the naked eye from a specific viewing position within the monument. The experience is visceral, not just theoretical. You have to stand in that exact spot, feel the wind, and watch the sky to understand the full impact of the design. This public engagement bridges the gap between the remote past and the present, making the ancient astronomers' achievement feel immediate and personal. It reminds us that the desire to understand our place in the cosmos and to mark that understanding in a way that brings community together is a timeless human impulse. The stones become a gathering place once more, not for Neolithic farmers but for modern seekers, all united by the wonder of watching a predicted piece of cosmic clockwork click perfectly into its stone-made slot. That long-awaited celestial appointment is happening right now. We are currently in the midst of a major lunar standstill cycle, with its peak influence stretching across the years 2024 and 2025. This is not a distant historical fact, but a live astronomical event unfolding in our night sky. For the first time in nearly 19 years, the moon is reaching its most extreme rising and setting points along the horizon, performing the same slow-motion dance that captivated our ancestors. This rare alignment offers something extraordinary, a bridge across 5,000 years of human history. It provides a living laboratory, a chance to test the theories of ancient astronomy with our own eyes. The mathematical models and software simulations are powerful, but they are predictions. The major standstill is the reality, the moment when the abstract lines on an archaeoastronomer's map become a tangible, observable phenomenon. This is a generational opportunity for direct verification. researchers and amateur astronomers are visiting sites like Callanish and the recumbent stone circles with renewed focus, cameras ready to capture the moment the moon kisses the horizon notch or settles into its stone frame. A single, clear photograph from this period that matches the predicted alignment serves as powerful, empirical evidence, moving the discussion from compelling theory toward confirmed fact. It allows modern science to have a conversation with ancient engineering, using the moon itself as the messenger, but the significance goes far beyond academic proof. This event has sparked a remarkable wave of public engagement. Astronomy clubs, historical societies, and national heritage organizations are hosting viewing events at these ancient sites. Imagine standing in the center of a stone circle on a cool, clear night, surrounded by others, all gazing south. There's a shared, patient silence as you wait for the moon to rise. When it finally appears, huge and low, and slides perfectly along the distant hill or between the guardian stones, a collective gasp often ripples through the crowd. It is a moment of pure connection. You are not just learning about history, you are participating in it. You are witnessing the same celestial spectacle that the builders intended you to see, fulfilling the purpose of their immense labor across an unimaginable gulf of time. This public experience transforms the stones from static relics into active portals. They function again, not for predicting, but for communing. The Major Standstill democratizes the mystery, making it accessible to anyone willing to look up and learn where to stand. It reminds us that this ancient knowledge is not locked away in textbooks, but is written in a language of light, stone, and horizon that we can all learn to read. This ongoing event invites us to become part of the story, to witness the enduring precision of a celestial clock that continues to keep perfect time. To truly hear what these stones are saying, we cannot rely on a single voice of expertise. The secret of the megalithic observatories is a puzzle whose pieces are scattered across multiple fields of study. It requires a conversation between disciplines, each bringing a different lens to the same silent stones. Archaeology provides the foundation, the hard facts of the site itself. Through careful excavation, it tells us when the stones were erected, what tools were used, and what materials were found nearby. It gives us the physical context, the stage upon which the celestial drama was set. But archaeology alone cannot tell us what the builders were looking at in the sky. This is where astronomy enters the dialogue. Using software to recreate ancient skies, astronomers can identify which celestial events align with the stone sightlines, providing the mathematical probability of intentional design. Together, archaeology and astronomy can establish what was built and what it was pointing toward. Yet, this still leaves the most profound question unanswered. Why? Why commit generations of labor to track a lunar cycle that does not dictate the planting season? To approach this question, we must invite anthropology and ethnography to the table. Anthropology examines the broader social structures, belief systems, and cultural practices of past peoples. It asks how a society organized itself to accomplish such a monumental task and what shared values could motivate it. Ethnography, the study of living cultures, offers a particularly powerful, if careful, parallel. By respectfully learning from the astronomical traditions of modern indigenous peoples around the world, we can glimpse alternative frameworks for understanding the cosmos. For instance, some indigenous cultures do not separate astronomy from storytelling, lore, or ecology. The stars and planets are ancestors, teachers, or markers for seasonal ceremonies that bind the community together. The moon might be seen as a grandmother, its cycle governing social gatherings, naming ceremonies, or times of reflection. This is not to say that Neolithic Europeans held the same beliefs as indigenous Australians or Native Americans. Their cultures are distinct and separated by vast time and space. The value is in seeing a different model of how human beings can relate to the sky. It shows us that celestial observation can be deeply embedded in a holistic world, where the practical, spiritual, and social are woven into a single, seamless fabric. This interdisciplinary approach prevents us from making a modern mistake, reducing these sites to mere Neolithic scientific instruments. A scientist sees an observatory. An anthropologist might see a cathedral, a courtroom, and a community calendar all in one. By listening to all these voices, the archaeologist's trowel, the astronomer's software, the anthropologist's models of social cohesion, and the ethnographer's records of living sky traditions, we begin to build a richer, more humbling picture. We start to understand that the precision of the alignment was not an end in itself, but a means to a far greater goal, anchoring a community's identity, rituals, and sense of order to the most reliable truth they knew, the eternal cycles of the cosmos itself. The stones were not just for watching the moon, they were for building a world that made sense beneath it. The perfect alignment of a full moon in a stone frame is a powerful sight, yet it is not a final answer. We must be honest about the limits of our own understanding. While the evidence for intentional lunar tracking is strong and growing, especially with modern photographic verification, it does not constitute absolute, definitive proof in the way we might demand for a modern scientific claim. The stones themselves offer no written testimony. We have magnificent, silent architecture that correlates beautifully with celestial events, but correlation is not the same as knowing the builder's minds. The true purpose of each circle, each tomb, each avenue was almost certainly a rich tapestry woven from many threads. Astronomy was likely one vital strand providing the cosmic framework. But intertwined with it were the golden threads of ceremony, of gathering, of marking life's passages from one generation to the next. There were the practical threads of social function, where the immense act of building itself forged community identity and established leadership. And there were the deep, spiritual threads connecting the people to their ancestors and to the forces they believed animated the world. To isolate just the astronomical thread and call it the sole purpose is to unravel the tapestry. A recumbent stone circle may have perfectly framed the southern moon, but that same frame also created a sacred space for storytelling, for decision-making, for honoring those who had passed. The winter solstice sunlight at Newgrange was a breathtaking astronomical event, but it also served as a profound symbol of rebirth and hope in the deepest dark. These functions are not separate, they are synergistic. The astronomical precision gave the ceremony its timing and its awe-inspiring backdrop. The ceremony, in turn, gave the astronomical observation its cultural meaning and emotional power. The social act of building and maintaining the site ensured the knowledge and the tradition survived. This multifaceted reality is why the debate between observatory and temple is, in many ways, a modern fabrication. For the people who used these places, it was all the same thing. The sky was sacred, and understanding its rhythms was a sacred act. Measuring the moon was a form of communion. This holistic view does not diminish their astronomical achievement, it elevates it. It means their science was not a cold, detached calculation, but a living, breathing part of their entire worldview. They sought not just to predict the moon, but to integrate its slow, sure rhythm into the very heartbeat of their culture. Our challenge is to hold this complexity without reducing it, to honor the precision we can measure while remaining humbly aware of the profound meanings we can only glimpse. This multifaceted view of the stones invites a necessary question. Could their true purpose have been far simpler, with the celestial alignments merely a fortunate accident of their design? Several compelling alternative explanations exist, each rooted in practical human needs. Some archaeologists argue these sites functioned primarily as territorial markers. In a landscape without maps or written deeds, a massive, permanent stone circle declares a powerful message. It says, this land is claimed, this place is significant, our ancestors are here. The effort required to build it demonstrates the strength and cohesion of the community. serving as a silent warning or an invitation to neighboring groups. Others see them fundamentally as ancestral tombs or memorial sites. The passage mounds like Newgrange undeniably contain the remains of individuals, suggesting a primary function as a resting place for the honored dead. The stone circles, often found near burial sites, could have served as places for ceremonies honoring those who came before, linking the living community to its lineage. A third perspective views them as seasonal gathering centers. In a dispersed, farming-based society, certain times of the year demanded communal activity, harvests, herd movements, or times of trade. A prominent central monument provided a neutral, sacred meeting ground for rituals, marriages, disputes, and feasts that reinforced social bonds. In this view, the stones are less about watching the sky and more about seeing each other, about maintaining the human network essential for survival. Each of these explanations is logical and supported by evidence from similar sites worldwide. They paint a picture of pragmatic communities addressing universal human concerns: land, lineage, and community. If these were the sole purposes, then the precise lunar alignments could be dismissed as a beautiful coincidence, a trick of pattern-seeking minds gazing at ancient ruins. Yet, this is where the synthesis becomes essential and more powerful than any single theory. What if we do not have to choose? What if the genius of these places lies in their integration of all these functions into a single, coherent whole? Imagine a society that did not compartmentalize the way we do. For them, the land, the ancestors, the community, and the cosmos were not separate categories, but interwoven threads of a single reality. A stone circle could indeed mark territory, but it did so by aligning that territory with the eternal, predictable laws of the heavens, making their claims sacred and cosmic, not just physical. It could be a place to honor ancestors, but by framing the moon's generational cycle, it directly connected the rhythm of the departed with the rhythm of the sky, suggesting the ancestors themselves were part of that celestial order. It was undoubtedly a seasonal gathering center, but the gatherings were timed and given profound meaning by celestial events. The community did not come together just to socialize, they came to witness. They gathered to see the solstice sun pierce the tomb, or the standstill moon cradle itself in stone, events that validated their shared beliefs and reinforced their place in the universe. In this synthesis, precise astronomy was not the only purpose, but it was the anchoring mechanism. It provided the immutable, predictable clock around which everything else, the rituals for the dead, the laws of the land, the meetings of the living, could be organized. The astronomical alignments transformed a gathering place into a meaning place. They turned a territorial marker into a covenant with the cosmos. They elevated a memorial site into a bridge between generations, all synchronized by the slow, patient dance of the moon. This holistic understanding does not reduce the astronomical achievement, it amplifies it. It shows that the builders wove their deepest scientific understanding directly into the fabric of their social and spiritual lives, creating a stable, resonant world where every stone held multiple layers of significance, whispering of land, lineage, community, and cosmos in a single, silent breath. This relationship with time stands as perhaps their most profound legacy. We live in an age of immediacy, where results are expected within quarterly reports or news cycles. The builders of these stone circles operated on a different scale entirely. They were not investing in a project for their own lifetimes, but for a celestial event their grandchildren might witness. This is not merely patience, it is a form of cultural time travel. They placed a bet on the future, trusting that their songs, their stories, and their precise instructions would survive unchanged long enough for the sky to validate their work. This required a society built on deep continuity, where the role of the sky watcher was more important than the individual who held it, and where the purpose of a community was to serve as a vessel for knowledge that spanned generations. The monument itself became the ultimate teacher, a permanent, unarguable reference point that could correct any drift in the oral tradition. If a later generation forgot the exact meaning of the southern hill, the stones would still frame it, waiting patiently for the moon to show them the truth again. This creates a powerful feedback loop between culture and cosmos, where the stability of the society ensured the accuracy of the astronomy, and the reliability of the astronomy, in turn, reinforced the stability and sacred order of the society. It was a self-perpetuating system of meaning, anchored in stone and stars. What does it say about a people that their greatest act of communal effort was to build a clock they themselves would never see complete? It speaks to a vision of the self that is almost foreign to us today. Their identity was not confined to their own brief years, but was woven into a longer tapestry that included revered ancestors and unborn descendants. To build for a future you will never inhabit is the ultimate act of faith. Faith in your descendants, faith in the order of the universe, and faith that the things you hold most sacred will remain sacred long after you are gone. The silent, perfect alignment of a standstill moon today is the fulfillment of that ancient faith. It is a message from the past, delivered on a schedule of celestial time, reminding us that some truths are too important to be left to memory alone. They must be set in stone, aimed at the horizon, and entrusted to the patient, turning sky. This silent testimony of stone and sky compels us to rethink everything we thought we knew about the so-called primitive past. The very label primitive carries a heavy assumption, suggesting a simple, rudimentary culture stumbling through the basics of survival. But what we are looking at is the opposite of rudimentary. It is a display of intellectual sophistication that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, the challenges of modern science. To achieve this precision without a written language, they had to invent a new one, a language of geometry, alignment, and generational memory. This was not a people merely reacting to their environment, they were modeling it. They were taking the complex, four-dimensional puzzle of celestial motion and translating it into a permanent, three-dimensional sculpture on the ground. This requires abstract thinking of a very high order. It demands the ability to conceptualize cycles of time longer than a human life, to project lines across a landscape that connect to points on a moving horizon, and to hold that multi-generational plan in the collective mind of a community until the final stone is set. This is not the work of simple farmers with a vague interest in the stars. This is the work of philosopher-engineers, of what we might call applied cosmologists. Their mathematical understanding, while not expressed in our numerals or equations, was embodied in perfect ratios and angles. The long sides of the station stone rectangle at Stonehenge, the precise spacing of the Callanish avenues, the careful leveling of a 50-ton recumbent slab, these are all solutions to geometric and engineering problems. They prove an intuitive yet rigorous grasp of proportion, measurement, and spatial reasoning. It was mathematics made physical, calculation rendered in granite. Their observational rigor is perhaps the most humbling aspect. Modern astronomy relies on digital sensors and computer models to filter out noise and find patterns. Their sensor was the human eye, and their database was a lifetime of looking up, to discern the moon's incremental creep along the horizon, a shift of just a finger's width year after year, and to recognize the pattern within that 18.6-year noise represents a pinnacle of disciplined, sustained observation. It is a scientific methodology built on patience and perfect recall. This forces a profound reevaluation. We often chart human progress as a straight line from simple to complex, with literacy and metal tools as the definitive turning points. These stone observatories stand as a monumental counterpoint. They demonstrate that a pre-literate Neolithic society could operate on a sophisticated intellectual plane, one dedicated to solving the deepest mysteries of their universe. Their great works were not palaces or fortresses of war, but silent libraries of cosmic knowledge. This shifts our perspective from seeing them as merely earlier versions of us, struggling toward our modernity, to recognizing them as accomplished masters of their own age, who chose to invest their greatest collective effort into a conversation with eternity. Their intelligence was not lesser. It was differently focused, channeled not into written words, but into a language of landscape and light that we are only now relearning how to read. The enduring power of this mystery lies in its unique position, straddling two fundamental human drives. On one side, we have the clean, verifiable language of hard science, the precise astronomy that lets us calculate alignments and reconstruct ancient skies with mathematical certainty. We can prove the stones point to a specific lunar event. This factual foundation is what elevates the discussion beyond mere speculation. Yet, on the other side, the stones whisper questions that science alone cannot answer. They speak to our deep-seated need to find patterns in the chaos, to weave a narrative of meaning from the random scatter of stars. They embody the universal desire to leave something behind that is greater than ourselves, a mark that says we were here and we understood our place in the grand scheme. This is where the cold data of celestial mechanics meets the warm, messy reality of the human spirit. We are drawn to the megaliths because they are not just ancient tools, they are mirrors. In their silent, patient alignment, we see our own search for order. In their generational construction, we see our own yearning for legacy. And in their perfect fusion of earth and sky, we see a timeless aspiration to anchor our fleeting lives to something eternal and true. The stones do not give us easy answers, and perhaps that is their greatest gift. They hold the tension between proof and purpose, between calculation and ceremony, inviting us to contemplate not just how they were built, but why. They challenge us to expand our definition of intelligence, to recognize that a society without written words could still compose a profound and lasting poem in stone, its verses written in moonlight and shadow, waiting for each new generation to read. So we stand at the crossroads of proof and poetry, where the hard angles of stone meet the soft light of a wandering moon. The evidence, gathered from windswept islands and quiet farmlands, paints a compelling portrait. These were not random monuments but deliberate instruments. The recurring alignment of massive stones with the moon's most extreme and rarest path is a pattern too strong to dismiss. It reveals a society capable of generational observation, precise engineering, and a sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics, all achieved without the tools we consider essential. This redefines the ancient mind. It was not primitive but profoundly patient, building a legacy of knowledge in the most durable medium they knew. The implications ripple through our understanding of prehistory. It suggests communities so unified by a cosmic vision that they could orchestrate decades of labor for a purpose that would only be fully realized by their descendants. Their intelligence was not measured in written formulas, but in the silent, perfect geometry of a moonrise framed for eternity. The next time you look up at the moon, remember its slow, 18-year dance. And know that 5,000 years ago, on hillsides we can still walk today, people were watching that same dance with an understanding so deep they carved its signature into the earth. We are living through a major lunar standstill right now. This is your chance to witness this ancient legacy in action. Visit a dark sky park, look up the next peak lunar event, or simply learn more about a site like Callanish. Go and see for yourself, stand where they stood, look toward the horizon they marked, and feel the humbling connection across millennia. In that moment, the stones are no longer silent. They are speaking the oldest human language of all, a story of wonder, written in stone and light, waiting for anyone willing to listen.